Dr. Kalai Shelby, Director General of CSIR, my dear friend and the inspiration behind IIT's research park, Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala, Dr. Rahul Valabalkar, young Anson Sando, members of the faculty and staff of the IIT and the IIT Research Park, speakers, delegates, students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Ma'am, first of all, may I add my welcome to Anson's and Ashok's as a privileged board member of the IIT Research Park. And I hope that this will be a forerunner of a lot more interactive work between the IIT Research Park and the CSIR. Professor Jhunjhunwala, thank you very much for inviting me to EnVision. I think the importance of such a forum is that it brings together people of science, it brings together people involved in its applications, people in academia, people who are policymakers, people from industry, finance and banking, and even society at large. I think that's what makes EnVision very unique. And I hope it will be a forerunner for such future dialogue, not only here at the research park, but across our vast country. Director General Kalai Shelby, it was very interesting to hear your perspective relative to the celebration of science. And it was almost a clarion call, not just from the leaders of the nation, but translated into leaders of science like yourself, to ensure that India's future depends on the intellectual capital that we develop as a nation. Geopolitical issues apart, I do not think that we can be divorced from the world. At the same time, I do not think the world is waiting to give us technology or help us develop science on a platter. I think there are many strategic issues that are involved, and the fact that we will need to be self-sufficient, I think, is extremely important, and thank you for reinforcing that, ma'am. So let me give you a perspective both as a citizen and as an industry representative. Today, I think there are few issues that are impacting the world. I just looked at from an industry perspective. The thing that we are most concerned about, and I know fellow speakers will be talking about this later on, is the impact of energy, the impact of inflation, and more than anything else, the race for good talent. Energy, inflation, and the race for good talent. And I say this because I see before me a wonderful set of students from various institutions. And please understand that your role in the future of science in our country will be absolutely vital. And each of these things, energy, inflation, and talent, has its unique dimensions. But coming to EnVision, I have always three questions in my mind on any issue. And to EnVision, I say, what are these three questions? These three questions are what, how, and why. What do we want to do? Director General Kalai Shelby mentioned that we need security. What do we need to do? We need to make world and India a cleaner place, a healthier place, a more secure environment. How do we need to do it? We have to do it. We need to spread awareness. It was very interesting. I was listening to a program and viewing a TV program last night about schools in our country who have started placing sustainability as part of their curriculum, even from the primary school stage. To me, that was very encouraging. And if that gets ingrained and inculcated in young minds, naturally over the years, as they go through school and university, this will be a major area of impact. And this is something that I was very intrigued, and it just happened before EnVision while I was tuning in to the news last night and a feature program after that. The next thing I think what we need to do is cooperate and collaborate. And that's what EnVision is all about. There is plenty in this world for everybody. We need to compete, of course, but we need to cooperate and collaborate. And why do we do this? The impact of climate change is there for us to see. It is not there for us to just read or hear. It is there for us to see. Each one of us complain about various things, infrastructure, untimely rains, all kinds of things. If we had this, if we had better storage, etc. But the fact is, it is real. And it is impacting us because it's impacting not just us here in this room, it's impacting cropping patterns, various things. I mean, it's impacting a whole host of issues. And all this can be addressed if we as citizens feel responsible and not externalize issues. And not externalize issues that the government has to do this has to be done, and that has to be done. The moment we internalize this, whether it's in academia, whether it's in industry, whether it's in research organizations, whether it's policymakers, we need to feel responsible that within the sphere of our influence, we need to make decisions or take decisions or provide directions that will help us as a country be sustainable, and therefore a society which will really be a vibrant society which has a care for the environment. EnVision talks about net zero. And net zero is a good goal, but it's a huge challenge. Net zero is a huge challenge. But we have little choice. It's not an aspirational challenge. It is a challenge nevertheless. Why do I say this? It's a challenge. We are in one dimension a developing country, and in another dimension an advancing country. So naturally, as our aspirations increase, as infrastructure develops, as the country progresses in many dimensions, if we continue as we are, the emissions will overcome us and also overhaul us. And it's very interesting if you look at, I don't know how many of you read the business line yesterday. The business line talks about energy and going green. And it talks about the fact that, yes, for a long time more even to come, coal, fossil fuel, etc. will be there. The question is, will it be cleaner? It's still the most economical. So the economical curve starts from coal and then moves to other forms of renewable energy. Coal as the least expensive, particularly at the pit head, and other forms of energy which are most expensive. But in those forms of energy, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from Milind Kulkarni later on, as to how, and other speakers, as how renewable energy is becoming more and more affordable. But if you look at it the other way, in terms of emissions, coal and oil are the highest. So you have this dichotomy. And that is the challenge for science. And at the last COP26 conference in 2021, there was a view, and this was very interesting, as the newspaper says, decoding India's Panchamrit strategy. And it basically says non-fossil energy capacity to reach 500 gigawatts, 50% of energy from renewables, reducing carbon emissions by 1 billion tons, reducing carbon intensity of GDP by 45%, and achieving net zero by 2070. And I think these are goals that are good to work towards. And in this journey, we need collaboration. As we have in EnVision, we have immediate goals, medium-term goals, and goals for the future. And I believe every stakeholder has a role. The government has a role in policy, academia and research in terms of developing new science and hypotheses, students in terms of taking this on as their projects for their master's, doctoral programs and working in collaborative research. Places like the IIT Research Park, which encourages startups, and particularly startups where academia and students are involved. And this creates a whole new dimension. People in finance and banking who understand this future need and therefore are willing to support it with capital. And all this we need to do. At the same time, we need to bear in mind that we do not have an endless pit or endless flow of capital. So costs are very important. Costs in terms of creation, once created, costs in terms of recycling, costs in terms of ensuring renewables are well maintained and do not deteriorate. So there are so many dimensions at which startups can work in and industry and academia can work on. These are all long-term issues, but if we miss doing these long-term issues, it will be a recipe for disaster. So therefore, all of us, once again, will need to internalize this. We need to feel as passionate about this as Dr. Jhunjhunwala is. And we need to be passionate about it and then bring it in our sphere of influence. Don't externalize. Let me leave you finally with just one thought, Professor Jhunjhunwala. Like Director General Kalai Shelby mentioned, we need to collaborate and cooperate. And this cannot be done at one institution. It will have to be done with various institutions. I'm reminded of a professor who's a good friend of mine, who I work very closely with, from Technion University in Israel. His name is Gideon Grader. Gideon and his colleagues across Tel Aviv University and Hebrew University of Jerusalem is working on Israel's needs over the next 20, 30 years. Israel's energy needs and water needs over the next 20, 30 years. What they are doing, it's not only the schools of science and engineering, it's also the School of Management, the School of Architecture, the School of Sociology, the School of Public Policy. Now, all these schools are working together in various dimensions to address our energy needs and our emission issues for the future. And therefore, a thought to the Director General, thought to people in the audience here from industry, a thought to people in academia, is to whatever directions that the government is funding, let it be funded through a larger view, a larger vision towards ensuring sustainability and ensuring that we reduce emissions. across the program that we've set ourselves in these goals. These are laudable goals, these are not easy goals, but every little bit that we do will help. And therefore, a forum like this is a very important forum for discussion. From this forum will emerge a few thoughts. And even if there's one little thought which influences each one of us, I think this forum would be a great success. And I hope that this forum once again will be a forerunner to many so that we make India and the world a better place to live in. Thank you very much for your attention.